So, Alyssa, what we talk about today is like at the heart of, I think, why we put this podcast together in the first place. It's really about how important these issues are to people's lives, how you see it in the office. I see it in the businesses that they're creating, but it's also part of their everyday lives. So Tamsen Fadal, who folks might know as a journalist or an author or an influencer, really jumped into this when she fell on the floor in the bathroom of her workplace with symptoms that she couldn't explain.
Yeah, well, this is very resonating to me because this is what people come into the office concerned about. They have an episode, they recognize it as a medical issue, but don't necessarily make the connection that maybe this is their foray into the menopausal experience, and it can be frightening. But I am just loving that she's bringing accurate information to the masses through a documentary, through her book, and she's not afraid to speak about her own personal experience, which really matters.
And she does it with so much energy. She's such a positive person. So it's hard to picture her being down and out, even for a minute. But, like so many people in this space, she's just adding something that people need. In her case, it's information. In other cases, it's a product or service. But we could be doing this show 12 hours a day, every day. There's so much to talk about and so many people who are making contributions.
Well, the other thing that I'm really thrilled she's speaking about is menopause in the workplace, because this has been the ultimate taboo and it really does affect people's productivity and work, but also it's an economic burden. So it's something that needs to be discussed.
Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Sherrill. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited to have our guest today, Tamsen Fadal, who has many, many roles and wears many hats. You might know her as a journalist, an Emmy award-winning journalist, and she's segued in that role and added menopause influencer to the work that she does based on her real experience. So we are so happy to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So how do we go from broadcasting news to broadcasting menopause symptoms? How does that happen?
I don't know. I ask myself that sometimes because I spend so much time thinking if I'm a newscaster, I got to just the facts, got to be, everything's got to be perfect. And then I went, you know what? Everything's not so perfect in life right now. So I'm going to just share it and see what happens. And so that's how it came about. And yeah, I think it's even a surprise to me, but I had a incident about 2 years ago in the studio where it was 10:30 at night. It was a Friday night. And I always remember it like yesterday because it was so shocking to me is that I was looking at the teleprompter and I was having a hard time for that first half hour with the words. And I'd been having that for a while. I'd look at a word and couldn't remember the word, or I'd look at a word and it wouldn't come out and I'd skip it and go to the next one. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? You need more sleep, or you need more caffeine, or I didn't know what was happening. And then I got scared that it was something more than that. And then this particular night, everything sort of happened. I couldn't even process what was in the prompter. I had this overwhelming, hot, not just a hot flash, just overtook me. My heart was racing out of control. And I'm in a studio of guys, and I said, hey, if I fall off this stool, because the chairs, I said, someone catch me, trying to make light of it because I didn't know what was going on. And I was a little embarrassed to be weak. And one of the guys I work with had the foresight to say, you know what, you should get down off there and just, sit this one out. And I've never gotten off the set. I've never, had to run to the bed, none of that stuff. And so I did get off the set. He walked me to the bathroom. I literally just kind of collapsed down onto the floor. And I remember I was laying there with my face, looking at the side of the toilet. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to throw up. I don't know what was going to happen. My heart was just where you could hear it. And he and my boss got me out to the car, and I went home, and I was for the whole weekend like, what in the world? Like, I didn't feel great, but I didn't know what happened. And I finally started doing, I'm a researcher by trade. That's what I do. And I started trying to figure out what was going on. And I really was kind of starting in the brain, thinking like something must be wrong. Like, I don't know, like I couldn't see it correctly. Am I having something wrong with my head? Is it Alzheimer's? I had no idea. And so I started going doctor to doctor to doctor. And I went to an endocrinologist. I got blood drawn. I went one after the other. And my gynecologist at the time said to me, well, look, there's some changes. We'll see. And I wound up doing tests, and he wrote my patient portal, in menopause, any questions? And that was it. And I remember I was getting on the plane to Tampa from Tampa, and I remember going, and I don't have, Rachel knows I don't have children. And I remember going like, oh my gosh, I can't have children anymore. Now, I wasn't trying to have children. I already knew that, but the emotional that goes with it, on top of the fact that like, oh my gosh, I'm of this certain age, and so that's where it came about. And then, I've been lucky enough to have women like Rachel and others in my life that have talked about these things, but it hadn't happened to me. So like they talked about it, but it hadn't happened to me yet. And I lost my mom at 51, and so I never saw her go through menopause because she had breast cancer. So she went through a medically induced menopause. I've since found out 20 years later. So that's how it started. And then I started talking about it. And then I was afraid to talk about it like on Instagram, because that's supposed to be the perfect place. So I went to TikTok and I started talking on TikTok. And all of a sudden, one of the videos went like over 1 million. Another one went to almost 2 million. And I went, I think there's a conversation that needs to be happening here. That's where it started. And it wasn't just like, hey, because I wasn't doing like a menopause dance. I was literally like listing symptoms. So anyway, that's where it began.
Wow. So you've unpacked so much that I see and hear every single day. And I really just want to make a shout out to you and the people around you at that time, because the first time you start to have symptoms, you really have no idea what's going on, and you really get scared. Am I having a heart attack? Am I having a stroke? What's going on here? And you went down all the proper paths to get checked out. I see this all the time in the office where women complain of exactly a situation such as you described, and we have to rule out all the medical things, but we also land at the diagnosis of perimenopause or menopause. So kudos to you for bringing this to the masses. I am just curious, because TikTok in my mind is always for the 5-year-olds or 12-year-olds or maybe teenagers who want to dance around. And I wasn't really imagining too many menopausal women looking for their information there. So how did that come to mind for you?
It's funny. So I work with somebody who helps me with social media, and he said to me, girl, I'm noticing that, you should be on the TikTok platform. And he's younger. And I said, like, I'm not doing TikTok. I'm not dancing, pointing, singing, pulling my shirt up so you can see my stomach. Like, I'm not doing any of those things. Like, that's crazy. I need to be on Instagram and Facebook. And he said, well, let's just try. And I said, well, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I don't have anything to say. And so I remember during the pandemic, because I had to broadcast from home for 2 months, and I'm like, I'm going to try TikTok. So I did it like everybody else. I did this thing, and it was awful. And literally for a year, it had like 8 views. And so that was it. I'm not doing this anymore. This is horrifying for my self-confidence and my self-esteem. Like, forget it. And so he said, no, let's just talk about what you're always talking about. Because I've been working on this documentary about menopause after this all happened to me. And so I said, okay, I'll just the facts. Like, that's what I know how to do as a journalist, just the facts. And so that's what I did. And I literally listed 34 symptoms of menopause. And this thing went like over 1 million views. And I went, oh. And then it wasn't just that it had 1 million views, but the part to me that was important was that it had conversation happening. And so people were talking and people were asking questions. And then I'm like, oh, I better find out some answers to these questions. So then everybody would ask a question, and I do another video, answering questions, because they were giving me what they wanted to know. And so now that's what's happened. I don't know how it happened, actually. So if I'm in the bathroom and I'm talking about something, I go on there with no makeup and I certainly don't look like this. And I just talk, and it's kind of refreshing.
I love that this 34 symptoms of menopause has become such like the vernacular, because actually there's probably more than 34 symptoms. 34 symptoms.
I was schooled on it.
It is surely not in any medical books. But anyway, that seems to be like the overwhelming fact. So kudos.
I know. You know what? I got schooled on it. So then I went back and I redid them all. And then I added all the ones that people were giving me. So I don't even know how many there are anymore. I just keep adding them to new videos. So there's more that was just the first video. So I don't know what number we're up to, but people keep adding their symptoms, which is I think it's kind of cool.
So there's so much in what you said. First of all, having known you for a while, I don't think you ever would have dreamt that you would have done this. I mean, when you're on TV about youth and not letting anybody know that you're getting older, even though as the days pass, you clearly are. So from a personal perspective, it's so wonderful to see this, because this isn't a place you ever thought you would be. The other piece that's shocking is that here you are a researcher. You are a fact finder for a living. You talk about facts. You tell people facts. You investigate all day. And here you were, I would say, an extraordinarily educated person with all the resources to find answers. And you're laying on the floor of your bathroom at work and you have no idea. And lucky for lots of people, you decided to turn that into a way to get information and share it. But it just speaks to how terrifyingly surprising this is and shouldn't be. And Liz, I want to go to you next about the people in your office. 50% of the people on the planet are going to go through menopause at some point. How is it possible that reading the symptoms aloud, and I'm sure it was your excellent delivery, how is that news? So, Alyssa, you've always used the expression, people come into your office and they don't know what's going on. And they say, am I going crazy? What do you tell them when it's often menopause?
Yeah, well, look, there's a huge disconnect with many of the symptoms that I'm sure you're speaking about on your TikTok and on your documentary, and what's actually happening. Because remember, menopause doesn't happen from one night to the next. It is a transition that could take even, 8, 9, 10 years, so that symptoms kind of wax and wane. And, who thinks about that? And this may be starting as early as, in your late 30s, early 40s. And you brought up such a good point, Tamsen, about your mom, that you didn't have her history to go by, when in fact, we really can look to our moms, if we're fortunate enough to have their stories, as a window in time and a little predictor of what we might go through. Give or take some lifestyle measures, but for sure. There's some genetic component. But the disconnect is real. And I think the only time that people really make the connection immediately is with a change in their menstrual habits. And that is oftentimes the first indication.
You know what I'm curious about is that perimenopause. Like I've never heard that phrase until like 2 years ago or whatever. But is that a newer phrase? Look at me, I'm asking you the question. Is that a newer phrase, or is that something that has been around forever and I just didn't know? Because to your point, Rachel, how did I cover everything? 30 years of journalism, and I can tell you, I've never said the word menopause on television until at the end of last year, when I finally started dealing with it. I never said the word. It wasn't in stories. It wasn't 2002 maybe, but I guess I don't even remember saying that ever.
Look, before Alyssa answers that, just share with people why menopause might have been in the news in 2002. Share that right.
Oh, yes.
Menopause has been in my world forever, so it's hard for me to look at this from the perspective of the not gynecologist. But yes, of course, menopause was something that was a taboo subject. Nobody really spoke about it. Women went on hormone therapy in an effort to feel better, and it was like, magic pills, if you will, for so many people. And then a big study came out that was actually not reported very accurately, but it suggested that, hormones are kind of all bad. Your breast cancer, uterus cancer, cardiovascular event, and everybody came off. It was like a huge plummet in the number of prescriptions of hormone therapy. In hindsight, it turns out that there were certain aspects of this study that were a little bit faulty, including the age of the women who were in the study were way older than they should have been to be studied for these issues. And number two, they were only given one particular form of hormone therapy, which may in and of itself have nuances, that are worse or more negative when compared to what we currently prescribe for women who want to take hormone therapy. So bottom line is the entire subject matter fell off the face of the earth, and women were just kind of asked to grin and bear their symptoms. And they did. But that's no longer the case. And a lot of this is thanks to people like you, because you're bringing this to the forefront and people are becoming less afraid to talk about it. I also want to say it's time that we reframe this. This is my little editorial for today. To reframe menopause as not a negative. It's a known entity. There are lots of good things that come out of the menopause state, and I prefer to focus on those. Don't need contraception if you don't want to use that. You won't have any more bleeding. That's certainly a plus. And a lot of times women find that it's a liberating time. And kids may have launched a little bit if they have kids. Maybe they have really moved forward in their professional careers. So I'll stop talking, but I'm all in for the more optimistic approach to this subject matter.
I love that, because I think it's so important, because I see a lot of the people that answer me on TikTok say, thank you for giving me hope. That's my little study is this big compared to the world that you see, or the world that's out there. And so it's pretty incredible. And I guess I love the fact that you're both doing this too, because there's so many, companies out there helping, but I think there's a lot of information that people have to get through too, because it can be, it was scary to me. I had no idea, and I do it for a living. So I had no idea.
So here's today's hot flash. A 2022 U.S. survey reported that 17% of women reported that menopause symptoms caused them to leave their job or think about leaving.
It really is interesting what, Liz is talking about, the solutions, of which hormone replacement therapy is an option, in consultation with your doctor. That was also a little editorial. But what's interesting is there's so many companies right now who are taking that stance. Like, menopause is not maybe inspiring, maybe not energizing, but there are positives. There are ways to deal with the symptoms. You're at the peak of your intellectual capabilities, potentially. You're bringing 30 plus years to your workplace. As Alyssa said, you might have opened up some free time, maybe, if there's such a thing, in your life. What I'm curious from, you are a researcher and you like to find answers to hard questions. What kind of research have you been doing in terms of books or interviewing experts, or does that go right into your documentary?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. I have a partner that I'm working on it with, but we didn't realize when we went into it how many tent poles there were that we were talking about. We were like, 1 billion women are going to be in menopause by 2025. Oh my gosh. And here are some of their stories. And then we went, oh, hold on. There's this whole business of menopause. Then there is not just that, but there's the emotional aspect. There's an intersection of midlife and menopause. And then there's, the media's, messaging of it. And there's workplace. And there's, the fact that it's funny, we were pulling TV clips to include in this. And we realized there's like maybe 10 shows over the course of the last 50 years of television that have mentioned it or have any kind of, now it's gotten more and more common, if you're watching, Grace and Frankie or Frankie or whatever, if you were watching those kind of shows, but up until the last 3 years, there was not any mention of it. So we have found so many different areas of it. And what's exciting to me is that there's so
many. Is the documentary based on that? Is the documentary like 12 hours long now?
No. But I realized every time as we were saying, like, okay, this is what it's about, then we had to bring something else in because it doesn't work without everything. You're not telling the whole story. And so that was exciting for me. And Rachel, when the last time I talked to you, I was like, well, we're going to do a talk. The first time I called Rachel about this, actually, by the way, full disclosure, I went, hey, I just want you guys to know there's like a lot of women going through menopause. And Rachel goes, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. And I went, oh, okay. Because when you're going through it, it's like, oh. And I'm sure, as a doctor, you're like, yeah, I got all that. Like, thanks, lady. But I find that the lack of information, because you can only get to, as many people as are coming in your office or are listening to a book or a podcast. And so I feel like the more that we're talking about it and have podcasts directly talking about this is the more that you're going to get, that word out there so somebody can repeat and repeat and repeat. So the documentary is focused on all of it, but I think that the main part of it is also to tell the stories in the right way. We want it to be entertaining and educational, not, depressing and fearful, and then, a little bit of humor, because that doesn't help anybody. Nobody learns anything from being scared or, has
so
right.
Would you think it has an optimistic tone?
Oh, yeah.
Tone? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, optimistic and realistic. We want it to have both. It has to have those ups and downs because that's what life is. But, as we would do the interviews, and we still have a few more stories that we're finishing out, as we would do the interviews, it would go from like, oh my gosh, this is what happened to me. And then in this like hilarious moment in the middle of the interview, and you go, oh, because that's real life. That's real life, is that there's that fine line, between all of it. And so I guess I feel, for me anyway, is that midlife was something to be feared because of the history of my mother. And I didn't see life past 51 in my head. And now I see it as this whole new thing that I could never have imagined I was going to experience. So for me, it's an exciting time, but it comes with it, a lot of questions. And I think that that's what I'm trying to do, is answer those questions and talk to experts to help do that, because I don't have that advice. I don't have that information, but I have, the ability to be able to ask a lot of questions.
It's funny. I see so many different scenarios play out in office. Again, I practice in the Northeast here in New York. So I guess that automatically makes my audience a little bit different than everybody else. But, 6,000 women a day are going into menopause. That's unbelievable. I would say there's a portion in my office who are so miserable. They literally can't get out of their own ways. It's really awful and rough for them to just have a reasonable quality of life, whether it's due to hot flashes, night sweats, whether it's sexual side effects that occur, dryness, discomfort during intercourse, and that type of thing. Some of the mental fog that you bring up. I mean, I'd say these three types of symptoms and weight gain are what I hear about all day, every day, and people want answers and solutions. And I feel comfortable that there are answers and solutions. It just can't be a one size fits all. But then it also really amazes me that some women, it's nothing, not a thing.
I know.
Some of it is genetic. Some of it, they, have been healthful all along, maybe taking proactive measures with diet and exercise and stress reduction. Are you seeing that in the people you're speaking to?
100%. What's interesting is that we went out into Times Square because we wanted to kind of get that pulse of people from all over and just stop them on the street. So they weren't planning. An MOS is always the scariest and the most fun thing to do. Scariest because you don't know if you're going to get anything, and the most fun because you're going to get something you never expected, right? And this really alarmed us. We talked to 5 women in a row that said, I breezed right through it. I didn't have anything. I breezed right. And I went, where are all these women coming from? Like, how come I'm not one of these women? I was stunned by that. I have to tell you that. I was really stunned by it. Now, that wasn't not everybody, but when we did 5 in a row, and I'll never forget it. And I turned to my production partner. I said, do you think maybe it's not as common as we think it is? And then we wound up, doing more research and saying like, okay, we were misled by ourselves, But I was really surprised by that. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, because I had no idea that was an option, and I wish I had chosen that one to have no symptoms.
Well, guess what? If you, we know there are certain triggers to some of the menopause symptoms, for example, alcohol, caffeine, and stress. So I think if you go to a Starbucks, maybe you'll find some flat in or catch them at a wine bar. Yeah.
You had said that you had passed the age when you were thinking about having a family, but when you entered menopause and actually finally figured out what it was, or were helped to figure out what it was, you had that feeling. I remember thinking, what if one of my kids either can't carry a child or their partner can't carry a child, and now I can't carry the baby for them? Like, literally, that's what I know. Like, that's not even normal. But that's
okay. I'm just going to chime in here. Actually, as long as you have a uterus, you could technically, but yes, I know where you're going with that.
So, thank you. But it's amazing. And one of the things it points out that Alyssa is so good about talking about with her patients and on the show is it affects every aspect of your life. You passed out in the bathroom in your place of work where you have a particular image that you wanted to portray. That affects your self-esteem. That affects your job.
Yeah.
That affects your anxiety level. It's so one of the things that's so important about all the conversations that you're catalyzing and that we're hoping to be a part of also is that it's not a little thing. And most of the things that happen in women's lives that are physiological or emotional are everything else too. They're social, they're behavioral, they're contextual. So, when we first met and we're talking about arousal and you couldn't say the word vagina, forget about on TV, you couldn't say it anywhere, and people don't really understand unless you're spending time learning about it. It affects everything. We had this amazing guest on. We were talking about incontinence and they said, some people just make so many changes in their lives. If you're incontinent, you might not want to engage in intimacy. And the one that just struck me is you don't want to pick up your own grandchild. And that was just, wow, that was just so illuminating to me about how big these things are in terms of how they impact you.
I was going to say, I just want to kind of go back to the workplace. I mean, your initial episode of concern was in your workplace and people clearly responded very diligently and immediately.
Yes.
And has anything changed in your workplace to perhaps accommodate for other women who are dealing with symptoms? Because this is something I hear about in practice. I hear about thermostat wars in boardrooms. I hear about, no allowances for, women who have been loyal and faithful and amazing workers for years and years. And, but because maybe of their menopause symptoms, they feel that their work life has been disrupted. What's your thought on that? Has that come across in any of your conversations?
Yeah, I don't think it, I've been asked about that before, and I don't know that it's come across in conversations, but I know that because of what I do for a living, my workplace has been really supportive about me talking about it. I think I could probably remember a time 10 years ago that maybe if you were in the media, they wouldn't love for their main anchor to be saying like, hey, I'm old and I'm this and I'm that. And I think that I'm really proud. I guess I feel very supported by it. I feel like I can walk into the news studio and I can talk openly about it. And I think, part of it is the fact that maybe, there's more conversation out there about it. I think that I hope that I am an example to the younger women that are here, that they can talk about it, whether it's to me or to somebody else, and they feel supported. And I have had conversations here, which has been really, really nice. So yeah, I can't say enough about the fact that I feel supported here. I know though, and I've talked to a lot of the women that have not felt like that. They have felt very, shameful about their symptoms and uncomfortable or been in a room where they can't say something. I mean, I'm a very vocal person, first of all, and I work for, my direct boss is a woman. And so that makes things even better. So I'll just walk in and be like, I'm in the hot flash. And she, and I can talk about it, but I don't know that everybody is that lucky to be able to have that. So I feel very lucky to be able to do that. In that moment, I don't think there would be anything anybody could have done because I didn't know. It's interesting though, the guy that helped me off of the set said to me, we talked like a year later because, the pandemic happened. We went into the pandemic like in March. And he said to me, I thought you were having a heart attack because I know how hot, the statistics of women having a heart attack and the age that you were in. He was like really delicate about it. And I said, you did? I said, I didn't know what was happening. He goes, that's what I was really worried about. And that's why I called your boss to bring in the other guy downstairs to help me. And I thought, oh my gosh. So that was incredible foresight at that time. But, when you talk about the workplace, I do feel supported myself. I would like other women to feel like that in other places that they work. Because we did talk to a few in the study, and we've had a lot of people bring video diaries in that have said like, I wanted to literally rip off my shirt in the middle of a board meeting, or I was sweating like crazy. My partner said to me, I'd be in a room talking and I had to literally tell the people I was talking to, like, I have brain fog and I just don't even know what I'm, saying anymore. So bear with me. So I just, but I don't think everyone has it that easy because I think some people feel like they're going to be judged or they're going to be considered too old or they're going to be feeling irrelevant. Yeah. And to your point, that comes with this age. It's a fear of not being relevant anymore.
Well,
I'm hoping that conversation changes. But
I love hearing you say this out loud. I have now heard about big corporations having women's wellness officers on site who work there.
I love to hear that.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and what we're seeing in the UK specifically, they're further ahead than we are. We got together with let's have fertility and maternity and egg freezing benefits so that we don't lose our most valuable professionals during that time of life. And hopefully we'll get there with menopause, certainly in the US, but in the UK, there are companies that are now saying, these are our best and brightest. These people have 30 years of experience. They're incredibly valuable to our organization. Let's offer them benefits, whatever they might be. Maybe it's a cooling room or the flexibility to be on Zoom when they can't be in a meeting, whatever it is, but really using that as a tool to keep people. And, I really bend towards the business piece, but I think that when money is involved, things change. So if I know that I'm losing you, you're now, I don't know how many hours of TV you do a day now, but losing you would be a big loss to the station. And so it's terrific that they were wonderful. And I would love that story to be the one that other people hear. Like, here's a way that we kept a real talent who's been in our work family for all these years, because there are women, it was partially COVID and childcare and a million other things that had women leaving the workforce. But there is research now suggesting that menopause and the symptoms and the inability to feel comfortable in a workplace are also contributing to women.
I'm going to chime in. I actually think there's a hormone replacement shortage in the UK, and that's part of this issue that they're trying to, do a good workaround. But either way, I think the workplace has to appreciate what's going on. So, are you writing a book now? Can you tell us a little about that?
I am. I've been working on a book for a while, but because I just keep getting more information, and I'm like, is that relevant? Is this relevant? But it really is the intersection of this, of midlife. Originally I'm like, I'm going to write a book about midlife and these incredible stories of women doing different things. And then I realized when menopause hit and the pandemic hit, I pulled everything back and said, wait a minute, like there's more. This has to be like full, 360. It can't just be one little 30% of this is like, hey, we're over 50 and we're doing great. And because I wanted to address all these different issues. So it's really about midlife, menopause, and finding meaning. Because I kept brushing up against this phrase, now what, like in my own life. And I thought, wow, I kept meeting different people, that men and women, that were saying like, well, now what am I supposed to do? I hit this certain age. I'm where I'm supposed to be in my career, or wanted to be in my career. Now what am I going to be doing? And I think that this is, one of the first times maybe people who are, Gen X and baby boomer are both in this place saying like, I got another 20 years, 30 years plus, what am I doing now? Like, I hadn't planned all this. I thought I was going to be, retiring or being able to, not wanting to do something else. And so that got me really, really fascinated, a lot of their stories. So I've interviewed a lot of these different people, mostly women, to talk about that. And then how to combat some of the things that we deal with in midlife and menopause, and with our minds and our brains, and what to do differently. So it's that intersection of those three things. And so I guess for me, I feel like I'm almost writing a journal, but it's really doing interviews, which is what I love to do. And then getting information of solutions. Yeah. So that's what it's about. And I'm hoping that it's helpful to people, because when I saw that content work on TikTok, I went, oh, there's more to this story than what I think there is.
People want to know they're not alone also. They want to be part of a community. Yeah. So if it's a TikTok community or a book community club or something along that line. So best.
And I promise I'm not dancing. I'm not doing a menopause dance. I promise. But we are going to have in July a menopause talk. We just kind of like pulled it together because there are some people out there doing some kind of cool content on menopause. And so then some are making it fun. Some are dancing and doing funny things and talking about hot flashes. But mine's a little more down, just the facts.
So before we leave, we could talk all day. When can we expect to see the documentary?
I don't know. We're hoping within the next year, the documentary, the book probably a little bit longer, but we're just trying to make sure that we thoroughly follow the stories of these women to give it justice and make sure that we get all parts of it, because we've done, we've trying to follow their stories. And then I feel like things are changing at lightning speed in this space, in the business part of it, and I keep saying to myself, oh my gosh, is there going to be some other kind of thing beside hormone, and we're going to be ready to release this, and they're going to say we've got something else to fix it. But
yes, I feel like the answer is yes, yes, and yes.
That's what I think. I'm like, do we release it sooner or later? But I'm hoping within the next year, and I'll make sure and let you know. I promise we'll be shouting it from the rooftops, because I'm excited, and I'm excited about the support we're getting with a lot of the different companies too. So that's very cool to me. I haven't met one person that hasn't been so supportive, that are heading up the companies or heading up podcasting, doing writing books, that haven't said like, tell me how to be a part, tell me what I can do, and tell me who I can tell. And that's kind of cool.
Well, whatever you do with elegance and intellect. So we're really looking forward to this. And we're so thankful that you're, making the world safe for people to talk about menopause, but really creating a platform where, in so many ways you didn't think you'd be in the conversation. And now
oh my gosh.
and now you're a big part of leading it. So thanks for putting yourself out there.
Thank you. Thank you for the time to talk. I learned so much, so I appreciate it.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.